Hello, everybody. Glad you're here. It has been a long time since I have live streamed. And so just to tell you, full disclosure, what I'm doing is I am living streaming through Zoom into YouTube. So I'm YouTube live, but I'm using a Zoom. And actually, I'm able to do this without any additional software. So I basically have just on a side note, I have the Zoom. Hello, everybody. Glad you're here. Pro. It has been a long time since I have live streamed. Wow. So sorry about that. I am live streaming through YouTube, but I'm using Zoom and no additional software. So I have the Zoom account, which is a pro account. And I think if you don't have anything less than that, you won't be able to actually use it. Because I have a pro account, I can actually connect my YouTube to my Zoom account and then actually go live on that. So that's what I'm doing today. Just kind of wanted to test out this feature. And hopefully this will be something that I can do on a more regular basis. I just want to move myself on the outside so I don't have to see myself in a kind of a delayed. So again, thank y'all for being here. I'm so glad you're here. It's been a minute since I've gone live. And I was wondering, you're probably wondering, what are we doing today? Well, we're going to focus on being intentional. And the best way to do that is to use strategy, right? The best way to be intentional is with strategy. And the series I would like to get into is your brand strategy in a crisis. So for those who may not know me, I am Dr. M. Stolard. I'm an entrepreneurial strategist where I help cultivate brand clarity for community organizations and for individuals and those who want to create social impact, right? So when an organization like yours is in the midst of a crisis, your brand can easily become damaged, and the messaging you bring without the strategy can easily become muddled. And so I just kind of want to be able to help you with that, give you some pointers in that direction. So I'm going to help you to cultivate some clarity to your brand in the midst of a crisis. For those of you who may not be familiar with me, I am, again, I'm an entrepreneurial strategist, but I teach. I'm a professor. I teach full-time at a couple of different schools, but I teach full-time and I also consult and I coach. And so I teach marketing, business analytics. My area of focus when it comes to coaching, consulting is brand strategy, repositioning, sentiment, customer sentiment, and consumer behavior. So sentiment, just simply, is probably the one I usually get the most questions on. So sentiment or sentiment analysis, sometimes I use the term interchangeably, or maybe even customer sentiment, but it's simply a process to identify authentic human emotions behind their respective words or phrases. So basically, how is the customer really feeling behind what they're saying, right? And more simply, it's the act of gathering and interpreting information. Most importantly, understanding customer feedback. So that's it. That's the part about sentiment. So this is the area that's truly exciting to me. It's the area that I spent most time studying and understanding these area of focus. And it's helped me to actually be a better coach, to be a better consultant, and be a better professor, And I'm thankful for where I am. I'm thankful that I have been blessed to have thousands of dollars of helping different organizations and individuals kind of get from where they're wanting to be to kind of move forward. We've worked with churches and community organizations all over the United States. A high concentration on being in Texas, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I'm pretty blessed and thankful. But it wasn't always that way. I think I'm at a point where my wife may not have to work, and I'm thankful for that as well. But it wasn't always that way. It wasn't the way that things always were. And so, I'll tell you, I had a good thing going. I used to work in IT. This should tell you a little bit about me. I used to work in IT. For those who don't know me personally, that was my thing. I truly love supporting people, helping people solve their various computer issues. One of the most fulfilling things for me was knowing that I can help them get unstuck, right? Teaching them ways to and dealing with whatever computer issues that may have come across. Help them dealing with the internet, the operating system. So this working with the computer was just so much easier, and I loved it so much. And I was always ranked in the top 5 of my particular department, so it was really a great feeling knowing that every day when I went to work, I was going to a place that I was excited about and truly, I felt fulfilled. But I remember one day going into work, I walked into work like any other day. And, one of my team leads said, send me over to HR. And I'm thinking, cool, I've been doing well and they must have a promotion or raise or something, or maybe they just have a special project for me. That's the thing that came to my mind. Maybe it's a special project or maybe it's a raise. They had a tech issue they wanted me to solve or to fix. And so I went in there and I walked into that office. I'll tell you, man, you know what? I'll never forget. I sat down with my manager and he's looking at me and he's like, Mr. Studi, I don't know how else to say this, but, we're downsizing. We're going to have to let you go. I remember thinking to myself, what? Downsizing? You're going to let me go? But I think I'm one of the best support people that y'all have. And I had the numbers to prove it. On top of that, no one even gave me the heads up. And I remember walking back to my desk embarrassed, having to collect my things. And I remember getting to my car and just feeling devastated. And then I started feeling so angry. How could I get up every day, go to work on time, supporting these people, that called in, that needed my help. And now they just let me go without a care in the world. And on top of that, no one even gave me a heads up. I was wondering if my coworkers knew and didn't warn me. Did my team lead know and just didn't tell me? Did he know that morning? And at that point, I said to myself, well, I know I'll be able to get another job, especially since it's in IT. So I started submitting applications and more applications, and I kept hearing no after no, and I'm confused. I'm like, why is no one hiring me? And these things started to get worse because, I'm getting behind on my bills and, I'm trying to keep up with the rent and the electricity and unable to put gas to my car at some point. And, and then the rent people, they want their money every month, I had some savings, but I ended up using that, And I'll never forget the day I had to pick up the phone and call my little brother, you hear me? My little brother. So, hey man, can I come crash at your place? Talk about embarrassing. I remember when I got over there at my brother's apartment, I remember having to sleep on the floor. You see, the couch had a spring in the middle, so I had to sit on the left side or the right side, but I definitely couldn't sleep on it, right? I remember sitting on the floor, leaning against the couch, saying to myself, like, what happened? Like thinking, how did I get here? Perhaps one of the most difficult times of my life. The thing was, I was in a crisis. And I'm not sure if I knew it at first. Sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you can't always see past what's going on right in front of you. Sometimes you're in the middle of a crisis and you don't even realize it, And once you realize you're in a crisis, then you have to start to make a change. If I had been paying more attention, I would have realized I was in a crisis, not when I got to my brother's house, not that night that I was sitting on the couch, with my head down and looking down and so forth. I was in a crisis way before that, but I wasn't paying attention. Now, here's the lesson. You have to be intentional. Let me say it again. You have to be intentional. And if you're not intentional, then you will continue to wander around haphazardly. To make that change, to be intentional, you must recognize that you're in a crisis and you have to create a strategy to get through it. Making change begins with one concept: implementing a strategy. And once you decide you're ready to be intentional, you can now begin to make that change. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I want you to realize that this is necessary. So the first thing we're going to talk about today, the main thing we're talking about today, is how to recognize when your brand is in a crisis. So a brand strategy crisis is a situation or an event when your brand or your organization, your community organization, is experiencing a significant decline in the brand reputation, in market share, or significant revenue loss, donation loss, right? Due to its failure. And maybe it's failing in the brand strategy department, or you're failing because you're no longer connecting with the people you're serving, no longer connecting with the donors, or it's some internal or external situation, right? But you have to be paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then before you know it, it is your company in the middle of a crisis. It's your community organization in the middle of a crisis. You have to, and you've been lulled to sleep, so much so that you are bleeding from this crisis. and you're bleeding, but you're not even fighting back. You need to know that you're in a crisis. And so I'm going to give you the 4 most common signs that your brand is in a crisis. Number 1, you're losing money, right? You have a declining in sales. You have a declining in donators donating money to your organization. If your brand is experiencing a significant decline in revenue or donations that are coming in, it may be a sign that your current marketing and branding strategies is no longer resonating with the customers or the clients. Maybe something is happening and you didn't make a change. Things like this don't happen overnight. I mean, sometimes it can, but in most cases, there's usually a steady decline that something took place that changed up something. Something has changed, whether internally or externally. Number 2, negative feedback from the customers, from the people you serve, from members of the board, right? You either received a single negative feedback, right? Or you receive multiple negative feedback from a customer, from an alternative brand, from someone that you're serving, and you've begun to receive several negative complaints. And these complaints have not been dealt with, not to the point where it has stopped the bleeding, right? Things kind of start off small and then they get bigger and bigger over time. Sometimes these negative comments are about a product that you have or a service that you're providing or the quality of service or poor customer service, right? That's a huge one. People call the phone to speak to somebody. How is your department answering that phone? Are they answering it as if they don't have time for you? Are they answering it as a point where they're like, you know what, they feel annoyed to even be on the phone? One of the things, when I worked in IT, I used to have to answer the phone sometimes for tech support and so forth. That was part of how we got our calls. But I liked answering the phone. I thought I was one of the few people, because if you didn't answer the phone, then you didn't necessarily have a job, right? So if people are calling in to try to donate money to your organization, right? And the person on the receiving end is not friendly in a genuine space, that could result in some negative feedback, and these things can indicate that a brand's reputation or your organization's reputation is in a crisis, or there's a significant failure. If that's the case, then you have to find out what caused the negative feedback. Is it even the lack of resources? That could be a thing as well. Number 3, increased competition, right? Did someone enter the market that you didn't expect or see coming? Is somebody serving the community the way you're serving the community? If when you serve the community, there's always a room for more people to help out. However, you don't want to, have your competition taking up all the donators, the ones who are donating money and so forth, right? Both parties should be able to serve equally and so forth. So you have to figure out what's going on. It's very much possible that there's a new competitor in the market that you're in, It's possible that a veteran competition has released a new campaign, Maybe there's a big organization, that is, if you're a smaller, more regional community service organization, and a bigger one has come into the market and decided, we want to go and help the community, and maybe it's the people that you're serving, it's possible that could be taking some of the market share, and these are some of the terms that sometimes we use with for-profit organizations, but it still applies. It still applies, right? Increased competition. If a business or organization is losing market share to competitors, right? If you're losing people who are willing to donate to you, competitors, it may be a sign that your current strategy, is not competitive enough. Maybe it was at one point, but it's no longer now. It's not competitive enough to stand out in the market, and there needs to be an adjustment. Number 4, and the last one we're going to talk about, is inconsistent messaging and visual identity. Inconsistent messaging and visual identity can confuse clients, dilute the brand's reputation, which can lead to a crisis. If you're running a community organization or a social impact group, or you're an individual that just believes in social change, these are the 4 most common signs that you're in a brand strategy crisis. And the inability to reposition the brand or make an adjustment with the brand strategy accordingly, it may be a sign that your current strategy is no longer effective, right? And you have to make a change. You know, if you remember the story I was telling you about myself, I'm sitting on the couch and I was like, what am I going to do next? You know, what I had to literally realize that I had been in a crisis longer than that moment, you know, and I had to figure out what I needed to do. I had to create I had to reposition myself. I had to create a new strategy, a new way to brand myself that was more effective. One of the things I came up with, I said, you know what? Well, let me just tell you this. My mom has, you know, we love our moms. My mom said a long time ago that you have really 24 hours to feel bad about yourself when you're in a major situation. 24 hours. You can sulk, you can cry, you can be upset as much as you want. But after those 24 hours, you got to get up, you got to figure out what you're going to do. What is that plan? You know, she told me that because I had gotten in a wreck. It wasn't a bad wreck. Thank God I'm here and no one got hurt and so forth. But it was a wreck that I got into. She said, you got one day to feel bad about yourself in that situation. But after that, you have to move forward. And so I had to remember that in that moment. And so the next day when I got up, I realized, you know what? I was going to go back to school. And so I was going to go back to school. I want to go back to school. You know, yeah, I was working in IT, but entrepreneurship and business was the direction that I really have always loved, you know? And so I said, you know what? I was going to go to a whole new different school. But my mother said, go back to the school that you were just at. You know, I mean, it's the shortest way to actually get to the finish line. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that because I owed him some money. And so long story short, you know, my mom going back and forth, she was like, you know, well, let's just go down and see what's going on. I didn't really want to go. And so I just said, if I owe this money, Mom, I don't have any money to pay it. And she said, well, let's check anyway. And I said, are you going to pay it? And she said, yes, you know, and she called my bluff. So we went down to the school. It was a crazy situation because, you know, I wasn't really as professional as I should have been. I was kind of leaning on the couch and just kind of like, I just didn't want to hear that bad news about how much money I owed. I think it was about $1,500 at the time. And so what happened was I spoke to the lady, said, yeah, you know, my name is Masudu Stolard and I'm here, da, 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 da. And so to look into possibly getting back to school, but I know y'all going to say no because I owe this money. And so they looked me up and they said, you don't owe any money. And I was like, huh? And so my mom, perfect credit and all, was like, can you check back and make sure that we heard you correctly? Is there anything else that's due? She's like, due or would be due? And the lady checked again and said, no, you owe no money. That you had a balance of $1,500 and some change, but a credit was also issued to you as well. So you don't owe any money. So you can start as soon as you're ready to start. I took that as a blessing. You know, I took that as a blessing. And so with that, that was the start of my brand strategy of repositioning myself to put myself in a better position to get out of the situation I was in and to move forward. You know, the thing is, the inability to reposition your brand or your organization or to make an adjustment to the brand in a strategic manner, it may be a sign, you know, that your current strategy is no longer effective and you have to think about something different. You can't just be doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different result. So that's pretty much all I have for you today. You know, next we will discuss, I think 4 steps. If you find yourself in an actual brand crisis, if you find yourself in a brand crisis, I call it your brand strategy in a crisis. I'm going to give you the first 4 things you need to do when you find yourself in a brand crisis. So feel free to reach out. If you have any questions, if you can like and subscribe, you know, that would be wonderful. And again, I'm Dr. M. Stolard. Remember to keep pushing forward, drive your influence, and be intentional by using strategy. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.